Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Did the Trump administration reverse course and now they're promoting the pride flag? Did Trump post a photo of himself as Jesus Christ? Can I resign too? Are gas prices ever going to go down? Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Some of the stories we'll be talking about today as hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use takes center stage. What did Trump know? They say he knew about the girls. Did he? We'll talk about it all. Our guest today, Patrick Byrne. He needs no introduction, but I'll do my best. How's that? PatrickByrne.com is his website. He's committed to the triumph of freedom over tyranny. Amen to that. He's done a gazillion things. He's got a PhD in philosophy from Stanford. He was the CEO of Overstock for a long time. He's the first company to accept Bitcoin back in the day. I mean, he files $3.5 billion lawsuit against Wall Street, settles naked selling allegations or lawsuit there. He's founded schools across the developing world, helping folks with education. I'm telling you right now, man, when you study Patrick Byrne, it's like reading a spy novel. Welcome, sir.
Sam, it's so great to be on your show again. Thank you so much. What an honor.
All right, there's so much to talk about first. Let's talk about your lawsuit. You sued Wall Street, huh?
Yes, I sued Wall Street. Actually, something like what's going on, what's went on with me in elections in the same strategic sense. I got in a big beef with Wall Street and some lawsuits that I used to get to the bottom of. I knew that by 2004, I knew there was some deep corruption on Wall Street, and I ended up in a bunch of lawsuits. I spent $34 million and I won $35 million. But in the process, I got to the core of what was really making Wall Street tick. And really, it was a big theft. And so it kind of went down in Wall Street history 20 years ago that one guy stood up to Wall Street and fought them and beat them. There's a way they can manipulate stocks and make money by manipulating stocks. And as Milton Friedman says, there's no free lunch. When you have hedge funds manipulating the market and making money that way, that money's coming from the plumber down the street who's got a 401k. It's coming from the pension funds of cops. So market manipulation on Wall Street costs Americans money. But it was eye-opening for me for a second reason, an even more important reason. If you have a moment,
Absolutely, please.
Well, we had, just like with election fraud, we had by 05, 06, all the proof that there was market manipulation going on and that the system was going to crater. It was going to create a crater. And we had the economists, we had the data, we had the insiders, we had the whistleblowers, we had the affidavits. When you watch Hollywood movies, you think like the Pelican Brief. Julia Roberts is some grad student who figures out some evil corporation is doing something wrong. She writes up a term paper and she puts it online, and the Washington Post swoops in, and the DOJ swoop in, and oh my God, there's a crime going on. Let's unsolve it. Let's unravel it for you. That's not what really happens. When you find that
the good guys don't win in 30 minutes, do they?
Oh, well, for one thing, you find out that all that corruption is feeding a lot of mouths. It's feeding a lot of people. And so all those people, the kinds of people who have senators on speed dial, so all their senators get called, and then all the law enforcement agencies get calls from the senators and the congressmen. And you can't get nothing. You can't get the law followed, even though it's clear.
Yeah, you don't want to go here, Sheriff. Elections are coming up. Look the other way, my friend. You don't want to go here, Sheriff. Look the other way. You found out this big scandal really didn't put a bunch of people in jail, even though you won, right?
Well, we did win. Actually, it ended up. It was part of my, and I hate talking about this. But at some point I was told it's time, Byrne, that you start being a little more open. I started cooperating with the FBI then against Wall Street. And I knew exactly what was going on. I had people overture me, pitch me for participating in their illegal scheme. So I went to the FBI. Eventually, some doors were open, and I went to the right people who got me talking to the right people, and I was explaining everything that went on. Eventually, I arrested 120 people. The wave of arrests that began in, I think, around Christmas '09 began with Galley and that guy Raj Rajmaritan and 120 people. In fact, I got a phone call on Christmas Day before the first arrest, which happened a few days later. And on Christmas Day, the FBI guy tracked me down and he called to say, Patrick, you're going to see the handcuffs come out this week. And you have to live the rest of your life knowing that everyone we arrest understands that your fingerprints are on his problems. And then over the next couple months, they arrested 120 people.
Did they really pay for their crimes, though, or did they get kind of Ghislaine Maxwell time, special treatment?
No, they got serious. Raj Rajmaritan from Galleon, look it up. Have somebody, Zach, you can look it up. A guy named Raj Rajmaritan from Galleon Capitals. He did, I think, 6-7 years. But still, for doing the kind of damage they did to the American economy and steal that kind of money, it's a pittance. I bet he got...
Back this into election fraud now, because that's kind of where you got your start watching the Wall Street fraud, and then you kind of parlay that into doubling down and getting to the bottom of election fraud, right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, I took a decade off there, but I did... But when the election starting in 2020, and for unrelated reasons, I'd been actually to assist a human trafficking law enforcement effort, looking into human trafficking. And I was down in Texas meeting with those people. And when people who take on human trafficking and mafias in general, often you need some cyber people, as I'm sure you know, Sam. You need cyber people who can get on computers and not just research, but maybe sneak and peek and do some. And those people were on this cyber team, and they started teaching me in the summer of 2020 as a hobby. They were looking into election fraud and saying there's these very strange patterns around the world. It's been going on around 15 years. And the patterns are people hold elections, that they stop counting in the middle of the night. Then when they start counting again, there's been a huge shift, and this guy's won. And that had happened in the Ukraine and in Ghana and in this place, all Philippines, all these different places that had happened. And so then it happened, but I learned a lot more too. Even the possibility, I remember somebody telling me this crazy story that there was a story that this technology actually came from Venezuela. And it all sounded so ridiculous until the night of November 3rd, 2020. And everything that they showed me to see is the patterns that you saw in these election scandals that had occurred.
Every time you refresh, there's one for me, three for thee, right?
Yeah. Well, this is all actually, if you go back to Iraq in 2008, there was an election, and all these kinds of things happened too down in Fallujah, where they stopped the counting in Fallujah and then it opened, and this has happened in Philippines. That certain pattern kept happening. So when it happened to us, I was quite confident that it was a theft. And then the math, because I built Overstock, and Overstock, being the CEO of an e-commerce company, is basically looking at numbers, just looking at numbers. I was the great numbers guy, really, for the first 8 years. I was the numbers guy for the company, and every
You're really the co-founder, right?
No, I was the founder.
Founder, okay.
And we were really cheap. And so really for years, I was the guy who poured through numbers and was making decisions, once a week, sending out a whole new set of decisions on pricing, on marketing, from this huge pot of numbers I got each Sunday. And I just spent 12 hours chunking it. Well, it didn't, I'm a mathematician by background. And so all kinds of mathematical oddities stood out from November 3rd, 2020 that would have told me anyway, but I understood how it worked. And then I spent the last 5 years kind of getting to the bottom of that. Don't know how much of that story you know.
And the takeaway, I know tons about it. The takeaway, though, is that there's election fraud. It's pretty much proven and documented, but really nobody's going to jail. Is it because everybody's blackmailed? Why aren't we really seeing the gloves come off? Even Donald a couple of months ago said, hey, all right, we're going to start having the truth on election fraud come out, and then nothing. What gives, Patrick?
It's a great question, and it is a lot like when I fought Wall Street, and we had all the facts, and the forces of justice that are supposed to respond don't respond. They start saying, well, is it because they're dumb? Do they not understand? No, they seem smart enough, and we'll better explain it again. We say, well, is it because they're lazy? No, they're not lazy. but it turns out that they are, well, everything's captured. Everything's captured. Well, first, it's super radioactive. It's such a radioactive issue. Secondly, I just want to double check on my power. I don't want to sleep it.
Okay, good. Corrupt. Plug in, sir. Yes, sir.
It's corrupt. It's corrupt is what happens. In D.C., there's a lot of Republicans in on this, as well as I think almost all the Democrats. I think that a huge amount of the people in D.C. are there on elections that got stolen, and they know not to look too deeply into this stuff. And that's all they need to know.
Well, and that's why Congress, even in January the 6th, I understand why maybe they claim they didn't do something that day, but they could have followed up and created accountability there, but they chose not to, right? I mean, that tells the whole story, doesn't it?
Yeah, they got manipulated. Congress got manipulated. Of course, J6 was a big information operation.
Oh, sure.
It was so set up there. What's interesting is people forget we had a dozen senators, 13 senators, and about 150 members of the House ready to do what's called the Green Bay sweep, which is,
in other words, get to the bottom of it.
Which was to ask Congress to take a 7-day, which the Constitution allows for. Take a 7-day break, go back to your states, revisit, have 2 or 3 day hearings, and then recommit who your electoral votes are to.
The Constitution actually calls for that as a redress of grievance mechanism, right?
Yes. Now it does. There was an 1871 or something, another law that the electoral law or something that changed it. But the Constitution definitely allows for that provision. But what happened was when we got into Congress on January 6th, this has all been kind of brushed out of history. They started doing it. They went down the list. They called for what's the first state? Alaska or Alabama? And Alabama, they took their votes. Alaska got their votes. Whatever, they got to Arkansas, got those. Then they got Arizona, and Arizona, just as they called on Arizona, and Ted Cruz and other people were all set to stand up and argue and make this point. And there were at least 150 members of Congress, of the House, and they were not going to get a clean vote. And without a clean vote, they could not proceed. And they were going to demand a 7 days. And what happened then is that's just the moment that the police on the east side threw open the doors and invited everybody in. And then as people walked through the doors, or were walking into the doors down in the congressional chambers, they set off the alarm that said, we're being invaded, we have to evacuate, because all these people are walking through the doors. That happened the instant. Nobody's really made a big deal of this. That happened the instant that they got on their list down to Arizona. All
right, so we got the timeline, we got the proof, Patrick, and I don't mean to hurry you along, but I want to drill into this. I thought Trump was going to get to the bottom of this.
Well, I don't mean to criticize our dear president, but Trump is, part of it is his problem. He hires the wrong people. He hires good-looking Fox people. Maybe if you're going to do the most important prosecution in American history, you need a prosecutor. Someone who's actually prosecuted somebody would be nice. Yeah. But Trump doesn't do that. He gets people that he met at his club that he likes, that, look good in a bikini, frankly. I'm only mentioning that because I am told that is how he met Alina Habba. However, Alina is actually one of the bright lights on his team, but that she was walking around in a bathing suit at his club in high heels, and that's how
there's an attorney right there, baby. Now let me just ask you: this rock song says "girls, girls, girls," right? Yeah. Question is, what did Trump know on the Epstein files, and does this overlap with election fraud?
Well, I think there's a lot of blackmail. By the way, P.S. I think Alina Habba is one of his best assets, but anyway, why he does this? Well, he's furious. He's furious. He wants it done, but he kept giving the job. Well, the DOJ wouldn't do anything because he put his number two. The number two of the DOJ. First number one is Pam Bondi, who's a Fox good look. She's on Fox News. She looks good. She was living in Florida. This is how you get co-opted. She She gets to the DOJ. She gets told, look, we know that this is really daunting to you, a 100,000 person organization. You just go home and live in Florida. We'll send for you when you need help. We'll run. And then the number 2 takes over, and that's Todd Blanche, who was a Democrat. And Todd, they deliberately slow walked everything they could slow walk at the DOJ. I was intimately involved in supplying information and stuff you could not believe. Well, Trump authorized the creation of a special task force. It was a big secret, but lots of the people involved, I know about it because it was all like, had a lot to do with the evidence that was going in. That task force he authorized, the DOJ for 4 months stalled $1 of funding, wouldn't allow anyone to transfer, things like that. So what should have taken a day took 4 months. Everything the guy wants to do.
Yeah, but isn't Trump onto this going, you clowns are out of here? I mean, why don't we take action and do something serious here?
Because he stands by Todd Blanche, because Todd Blanche is a Democrat, but who defended him in New York, and he thinks did a good job. Todd lost the case. It was that case, I think it was the New York, the real estate.
How do you do a good job losing a case?
Well, Trump has problems with trust. So if he meets somebody and likes them and feels he can trust them, he'll just go all in with them. I mean, he put such a guy at number 2 at the DOJ, Todd Blanche, who's blocked everything, any progress from the DOJ. He's all happy talk. So I think he should have moved it into the Department of War. This is a national security issue. Tulsi is Tulsi took, I'll tell you what, excuse me, Tulsi finally in mid-June, took until mid-June, we had 15 Venezuelan defectors over in the Bahamas on January 20th, ready to come into the States. It took till March to get special permission to come into the States. It took really until June till they were getting seriously debriefed. But once those debriefings started, I mean, like 14 federal officers sitting in a half moon debriefing one Venezuelan defector at a time. These guys all got immunity, and they all dissed how everything worked. The election systems, the history of the election systems, the money flows, the Tren de Aragua, the whole financial structure of the cartel, everything got, that was June and July.
Everything got vetted. The truth came out, right?
The truth came out, and by September, by Labor Day, Tulsi had that all written up. And there were 2 reports, and one's classified and one's public. And one report says, we looked at these machines and they're vulnerable as hell. The other report is the report on the history. And the history is that Venezuela developed these, and it's been used for 20 years. It's flipped 72 different national elections in different countries. And the CIA has known about this since 2007, and they've been using it since 2009. They propagated it. John Brennan and Barack Obama propagated this technology to 32 different nations through an NGO called CEPS. And every one of those nations...
Hold on, spell that so everybody knows.
A Charlie Echo Papa Sierra. CEPP. S. Sierra. And it's based in Alexandria, Virginia. And it's staffed by George Soros, and it's funded by USAID, which we now all know is CIA. And their whole mission...
Being you, taxpayers.
Being you. $5.9 billion you taxpayers have paid over the years to spread this technology to 32 Western countries, which then all elected, these left-wing guys who say, let's not have borders. Let's invite 20 million people who hate us into our country. Those people aren't really winning elections. They're getting installed by these machines. And we have the people who did it. This is what's...
Yeah, it's like Tina Peters says. It's selection time, not election time.
Yes. Well, the people who wrote the code that created the effect that Tina Peters found, the Venezuelans who did that are now my buddies. I've been living overseas with them, on top of them for 2.5 years in safe houses. And they defected. They saw the light. They saw that they were destroying the world and did the right thing and tried to... But... Boy, you think that in the movies something like this happens and, the CIA and the NSA and all the forces of freedom and heroism go to work. It's nothing like that. It's a bunch of bureaucrats and it's a bunch of captured bureaucrats. It's just the bureaucrats don't care about the truth. They have been fighting this for 14 months. We have everything. They've been fighting. Tulsi's classified report exposes it all. I hope that someday that gets public. And
So let me ask you then, has Trump been sunk by the deep state?
No. He's paddling. He's staying afloat. He finally, they didn't want him to do Venezuela. He's surrounded by, there's two forces at work. There are forces that want him to do the right thing. Like, of course, we have to overthrow the regime. But there's all these in Venezuela. But
AKA Sam and Patrick, by the way.
Yeah. So you may be closer to them than me. But there are other forces who have been saying, basically the economic force, he's surrounded by these Republican billionaires, but they're Republican in name only. And they make fortunes with Venezuela. So they've been trying to tell Trump, no, don't overthrow the government. We'll just change one cartel leader to another cartel leader, and we'll just keep pumping the oil, and we'll get mineral rights here, and we'll get gold rights there, and don't disrupt anything. And that's the bad people around Trump are telling him that, and they're always telling him not to act. They always have some other reason why he should not be doing what is responsible.
Yeah, it's the George Bush-esque Republican style plan.
Correct.
That kind of deal, right?
Exactly.
Then there's the other group.
Well, let me give you an example. Let me give you, Don Jr. now has a supper club in Washington, D.C. called the Executive Branch. Do you know about this?
I don't.
$500,000 entrance fee, no lobbyists allowed, and it's at this point it's like oil company executives and mining executives and a bunch of insiders from the Trump administration, and then they're making deals and they're carving up Venezuela like a Christmas turkey. Nobody gives a shit about the people. It's not about how do we get rid of the dictator. It's just we've made a deal where so far we're saying that dictator can stay and the people you just keep staying crushed. But Madam Dictator, now this is how your oil is going to come to us, and our companies are going to be the ones that build the gold mine and this uranium field you have.
Well, as long as we promote criminal activity our way as opposed to the other guy's way, and we're in charge now, we're fine.
Yeah, as long as we don't care anything for the 30 million people there. And that's being done because there's a group of people, and the CIA's in on it, Rick Grinnell is in on it, Chevron, and frankly, it's all of Don Jr.'s cronies, all these business cronies, and that's their approach. I think.
Does Senior know Junior's doing this?
I'm sure he knows that he's got this supper club. Yeah, what if Hunter Biden opened up a supper club called the Oval Office, charged $500,000 to get in, and it was just his dad's people.
Yeah, and it had a logo of Bill Clinton and Monica on it.
We would freak out. Yeah, right. We would freak out. But so it's kind of, I get mad because I actually think Trump Trump literally could be thinking or imagining that in 50 years, maybe his name's going to get carved. His face is going to get carved on Mount Rushmore if he did a good job. Because we would see, if everything is exposed, that the West was almost overthrown and then he came back. And instead of focusing on that, he's focusing on selling watches and Trump coins and getting his people are getting good business deals. He doesn't understand that there's a country now of Venezuela where everybody thought he was the liberator and leaving the dictators in charge. And the woman who's the dictator now is just from the same cartel as the last dictator. And it's horrible.
Yeah, so it's like the new boss is the old boss, right?
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah. Where do we go from here then? Do you think President Trump can get anything done? We thought really when he ran for office the first time, and then especially the second time, it was kind of like, hey, man, the first time he kind of didn't realize how deep the deep state was. Second time he's going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to take action. People are going to prison. You know what? It's going to be the deep state is going to be, stopped for a change. Now most Americans are disappointed. They're going, man, this isn't what we signed up for. We're at war. You got girls, and Donald knew about them. People are saying, what did Trump know? Now you've got this special club by Junior and company. You've got people resigning left and right. You got sex allegations everywhere. Are we going to have any truth, justice in the American way? When we get back, Patrick Byrne with me. We'll be talking about this in more detail. PatrickByrne.com is his website. Look, the guy's got a PhD in philosophy, folks. He wants to have the triumph of freedom over tyranny, and I say amen. Quick pause. Liberty Roundtable Live.